Thank you for listening and for coming back. This podcast exists because people like you support it, share it, and find value in these conversations. There aren't many podcasts dedicated to FHIR and health tech with a focus on real practical experience in the field. And that's why this one exists. My goal has always been to bring the kinds of honest, behind the scenes conversations I have with peers into the community, sharing real world expertise, lessons learned, and perspectives you don't often hear elsewhere. If you find this helpful, please consider supporting the work on Substack at FHIR IQ Playbook. Now, please enjoy this conversation with Max Nussbaumer. Hey, Max, thanks for joining the podcast. Where are you calling from today?
Hi, Eugene. Thank you for the invite. I'm calling from San Francisco.
Awesome. It's must be a lot nicer weather there than it is around here, Western Pennsylvania. It's like, I think, wind chill -25 today or something like that. And then we have like probably 2 feet of snow that we got over the last couple of days. So I don't know if you saw the big snowstorm. So you picked the right place to be in your trip to the US.
Definitely, yeah. But I will also head over to Boston at some point because of just of all the health tech stuff going on there right now. But definitely San Francisco is a great place to be, especially when there is so much happening right now within the industry.
That's awesome. So I think you got some big news that you wanted to share about what you're doing, and maybe that's connected to why you're in San Francisco.
That's true, yeah. So I have founded my own company, my own startup, and it's called Max Health. It's based in the US, and now I'm approaching the US market after I was working mainly in Europe.
Nice, that's awesome. My older son is Max, so I love that name. Cool. So what made you want to start a company?
Well, I've been doing freelancing before, and essentially, yeah, I have had a great time as a freelancer with the projects I've worked on, and yeah, I essentially saw that there's so much more things I'm interested in. And it's, for me, like, I will get back to that later, but it's not only about FHIR, but for me, it's a lot about a holistic view on the healthcare system. And for that reason, yeah, Max Health is a more generic venture, a more generic business that has the approach to max health in any way possible, but starting, of course, with my existing knowledge in FHIR. And yeah, we want to go into wearable devices as well to showcase the capabilities of the infrastructure that we built and essentially give a clear value proposition to everyone, right? So that you don't have to imagine how it could be in the future, but you have the right way, clear effect on hand.
Who's your customer? Who's your primary customer?
So currently I'm still in B2B, meaning I offer still consultancy as I did before, but I also have started building and essentially selling my own software, which is mostly related to the Smart on FHIR standard. There's a lot of solutions that implement the standard now. And mine is a FHIR server agnostic solution, which allows basically to use multiple FHIR servers together and offers an identity management system for that. But aside from this, I'm also working together with my team on the B2C wearable, because, yeah, as mentioned, it's important to have the real world impact visible also for the patients right away.
And for those that don't know you, you've been in the FHIR space for quite a bit. And I know, Max, like, we met at the Connectathon in Pittsburgh, and then we talked a little bit prior to that, but you worked for FHIRly, and then you did a whole bunch of consulting in the FHIR space for quite a long time. So I think you're pretty much like an expert when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, after working in this field quite a while, first I've been working at the Technical University in Munich, or with them, and in science only, and that's also how I got into these conferences. So yeah, going into like following the academic path is definitely something worth it, because you meet a lot of great people there, and so yeah, I'm still a little bit sad that I don't have so much time left every day to still do some scientific work. But yeah, until today, it is something very important to me to keep myself educated. Yeah, so I worked with FHIRly as well, and they gave me a lot of education for which I'm very grateful, of course. So they are I think, very popular experts in the FHIR world, because they just do this since it's been around. And yeah, so I'm still well in touch with the FHIR community, and I hope that it also starts to become a thing more here on the West Coast. I feel like especially San Francisco is a little bit, still to be approached.
Yeah, hear that. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of nice startups and a lot of folks working in the space. And I think FHIR was kind of, I would say, niche, very niche type of technology and a standard. Going back a couple of years, I know I came from what you would call the traditional kind of US healthcare industry, and I did not work with FHIR until maybe 4 years ago, until I got into like more of the digital health space. So you feel like there's a much more adoption of FHIR now by other organizations. Like we've had these, obviously announcements from OpenAI and Claude Healthcare, and they're using FHIR APIs now, right, to connect your data within, which is a pretty big. Obviously, we've had something like Apple Health for years. We've had other things that have been out there, but I think this is like the first real, just like major adoption of FHIR for a consumer use
Right.
case. So you feel like everything's kind of like moving much faster now than it wasn't maybe even 3 years ago. And even like I would say it's not just the US, right? Because like I was in Portugal in the fall and talking to all the folks from Europe, and even things across Europe are moving with EHDS, and other things are moving very quickly towards just broad adoption of FHIR, right?
Yes, I would say the US is definitely on fire. I'm also trying to support startups that try to make their first steps in health tech. And that's why I say in San Francisco, I educate them a little. Essentially, first thoughts and first intention is to do something proprietary, of course, something protectable. But the idea of FHIR and the frameworks upon FHIR is not to restrict yourself in being competitive, but actually become way more competitive, right? Because the infrastructure enables you to plug in solutions, and these solutions are the key value that you can bring in there. And I see there's in the US so many things happening right now. Claude with the MCP apps and with their healthcare integrations are definitely changing the industry right now. It's actually hard to say something about products you're working on and building, because software is inflationary, right? You can build something within a few hours now. If you use the right techniques for it, it will be usable. And within a few more days, it will be at the level that took, maybe a year before. And that will definitely have more impact on FHIR applications, smart on FHIR applications. And we don't yet know exactly where the journey goes, because the primary idea behind the standardization of healthcare data is to give the one hospital or like one provider, one patient opportunity to use the same solution as the other one, right? Who is completely somewhere else geographically. That is the main idea there. And the approaches until now were heavily restricted to the fact that only humans can solve it. Only very intelligent humans, actually. Now we have artificial intelligence being more or intelligent enough, definitely, to do that stuff. And for that reason, there is a lot of interesting stuff going on right now.
Yeah, I do take issue with anybody that says it's intelligent, but it's like intelligence. I feel like it's very similar to our intelligence, but it's not exactly. So I feel like that's where the critical combination is of, if you have the right expertise, it really is a supercharge. Just like you mentioned, I think with coding and programming and building things, is order of magnitude faster and easier, provided you have the right, I think, skills and understanding, and also understanding of underlying problems that you're trying to solve. So I
Right.
think it's like, it's not like it's like an automatic painter, but you still need to tell it what to paint, because it's not going to figure that out for you, and it's not necessarily going to know which technique to use or which colors to use. But once you have that understanding, it really is good to build that, right?
Right. I also feel like it's like magic wands. You still need to spell cast the spells, right? If you don't say
Yeah.
Leviosa or whatsoever, then it's not gonna do what it should, right?
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah,
Harry
right.
Potter.
That's right. No, I think that's an even better analogy. We're
No,
all
it's
wizards.
Leviosa.
So now that everybody has this magic wand, so what do you think is the differentiator for specifically for startups? And I've had, my own experimentation in this and building, I have a ton of things I built. And now what's the next step? What should I be doing to get it in front of actual investors, clients, people working on the same problem? What has your experience been with that?
So I feel like, yeah, there is a lot of confidence around now. We see AI improving or enhancing everyone's confidence in what we are capable of doing, even though we're not, right? So that is a risk, a factor of risk that affects us all because we rely on this technology more and more. And once we hit the token limit, we experience a drastic drop in productivity. The problem, we have to just accept it, that we have to shift what we actually can do. So yeah, if it's about casting the right spells, or if it's about having a very holistic approach, I think it's a combination of both to actually enhance your knowledge. So without being knowledgeable on a certain field, your magic wand won't do anything that helps you. I mean, maybe coincidentally, yes, but usually not, right? So I'm with you there. And my main motivation to also do Max Health and like give it the generic name is, at some point for me, it was clear that healthcare and treatments and decisions that are being made on a patient's everyday life are just like a chess game. So in the end, the heartbeat is your king, right? So, and you want it to live for the next turn to beat if it's like your heart. So, and the chess computers are so much better than like the chess AIs are so much better than humans that we wouldn't even consider like competing with them, right? We already let AIs compete against each other. So I feel like that should be the same in healthcare, and we should make that accessible to anyone globally, because the data is like coming from right now from just a few data sources that are compliant to these regulated, like to these standardized regulations using FHIR and others. But we do have so much proprietary data everywhere in the world that we could map and enhance and use to make predictions, right, that are way more accurate than a human could ever make them. I know it sounds kind of revolutionary, and some people say, no, you can't replace AI with human doctors. You can't replace human doctors with AI. Maybe it's not, that's why I just mix it up, because it's not going to happen that way. You substitute each other in certain processes. That's what I think. Sometimes it needs AI.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, you're not replacing human beings' judgment and ability to, put all these data points together, but you help them save time by doing the hard tasks. And I think there's a lot that can be done all across kind of the care continuum. Like, I had this experience of, colonoscopy that took like a week to schedule, and I had to jump through so many hoops. It was really like crazy. And that's still how it works a lot of times. And that's a simple thing, right? That's like a simple screening. If you have really, clinical, conditions, and, you're managing multiple people's health, which is a lot of us. I have 2 kids. I have my spouse. She has, issues that occasionally I have to help with. And, there are people that take care of their caretakers for their grandparents or their parents. And it is just so difficult to do that. And I feel like that's where really the benefit of having this kind of, team of agents that can help you make all of these shortcuts. They give you all the information you need to make decisions without you needing to jump through hoops or do things that are really frustrating and low value and just, suck time and effort and cost from people, right? So do
Yeah.
you feel like which problem of healthcare are you feel like is the most ripe for this innovation that we're seeing now, like with Claude and MCP, and being able to create like apps on the fly pretty much for all these different problems?
Well, I think there is in healthcare, there is a huge issue with the financial incentives behind everything, right? We have in the US the problem that there is 17% of the GDP being spent on healthcare industry, and that's being considered way too much compared to the other countries and in general. So also there is a lot of criticism on how the US handles public healthcare compared to Europe, and I feel like there is often the wrong incentive to do something. I think I read it from, I should cite it there properly. So I read it from Sylvia Thun from the Charité of Berlin. She said it's crazy that in aerospace we have all these standards and we don't have them in healthcare, like international standards. We don't want to have airplanes crash mid-air, and that's why we even talk with people or like pilots from countries that, like, even if you're like enemies, still in some way they have some regulations there to not crash mid-air full of civilians and in the airplane, right? And in healthcare, that really doesn't exist at all. So there's no incentive to do that because the main driver of economy is usually money. And it's hard to monetize this if there's only individualist, like the damage is usually only affecting individuals, right? So you have this long chain of patient advocacy and what so on. And there's two sides to every story and so on. And that's not the case when an airplane crashes, right? You have many people die and everybody's sad and huge damage. So there is a huge financial incentives when some catastrophe happens. And that's what I'm a bit afraid of, that also like always humanity seeks to experience a catastrophe first before actually doing something, even though it was clear in before that you could do something, you know? And yeah, so I also try to add up to this transparency a lot. I'm a strong advocate for transparency of patient data. Like the patient should access their own data, should be able to opt in to use, like let their data being used in a certain extent, to some certain extent in research, to ideally give evidence-based decisions and clinical decision support back to that patient, right? That's what we want. And yeah, that's also my approach here.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think it also like first I think your GDP number is a little under it's a little under the number that I think it's already close to 25% last time I heard. So
Right.
17% that's maybe like 10 years ago. And I think people are saying it's going to get even worse now, like all the way to a third of the GDP because of all the all the users of the utilization is coming from, people with multiple conditions and very, very extremely expensive drugs. And there's more and more specialty drugs coming to the market. And so that just pushes up the cost more and more. And there's new treatments and they push up the cost more and more. And so that's where like my whole thesis would be like any digital solution or any new product that's coming on the market, it should help reduce the cost for patients and consumers, and like be very, transparent how it does that, right? Because I think if you have solutions that, well, they don't really reduce the cost, they just help you navigate, that's solving one problem, but then that's not solving the actual problem, which is where is the cost coming from, right?
Yeah. And with a lot of data, it doesn't really matter which standard it uses, but it needs to use some standard. So I think the world needs FHIR. It could be something else, but it is FHIR. We have to that is the main standard being used. There is OpenEHR, which was popular, especially in Europe for a while, I think, and it still can be used, right? Because of AI, data mapping happens so fast now. You can still use your standards, but you need to make the data flow and make it accessible to the patient and permit or let the patient give out permissions and consent and how it's being used. If that framework gives like user experiences that are like for everyone, including people of old age or maybe even children, then it's something that we can benefit from as humanity, actually.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we can make a big difference by making these tools available to everybody who needs them and try to minimize maybe interaction with the healthcare system until it's absolutely unavoidable, which is, the only way we're going to reduce costs. Like, let's be real, right? If everybody has to go to emergency room, the only way to reduce the cost is like stop them from going to emergency room, especially when they have something like a cold or something like a scratch, right? Like, and you focus more on preventative healthcare, right? Like all of that stuff. If you give people the information of how do they manage their healthcare day to day, that helps reduce the overall cost, right, of the system. But now talking about FHIR, and I think where FHIR is going is more of it's less of a very open, wide standard to support a million different use cases to a more like very specific set of profiles and resources, right? And use cases. I think we've seen with R6 from Graham and Josh Mundell talking about reducing kind of like the work in progress or the triage, the trial use rather,
Right.
to put that kind of as a separate thing that working groups can keep on working on, but the standard itself will be more like locked down. What are your thoughts on that? Is that going to reduce some of the innovation that we've seen, or is it just going to help people so that when they implement FHIR, they know for sure that, this resource or that resource is not going to change, like we've seen, between R4, R5 and stuff like that.
Right. So when at Dev Days, like last year, I also like gave a talk on using AI to retrieve FHIR data from unstructured data, right? And that's something that becomes very important now to get data out of situations like that are described in natural language. So that is something that I see a lot also here now in San Francisco at hackathons, which is called spatial awareness. There is AI being used, of course, to describe scenes, and these scenes are then being processed further. So when you mentioned the emergency rooms being like flooded with people who don't belong there, right? There is a lot of people who think of solutions about this right now, using AI, using spatial awareness, improving it. And I think that is also kind of the answer to your question here. There is like mentioning these hackathons. Just I was at one a few days ago for the showcase, so I didn't participate, but I looked at the outcomes, and one team of 4 18-year-old guys, they were really implementing something very cool over the last few days, I have to say. And it was essentially the same thing that I described in also a lot of, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but definitely in a lot of conversations, the idea of the life-saving lawnmower, which is a public lawnmower that doesn't only mow but also sees when basically something is happening where somebody needs medical attention, right? So that's something that happens now. We will have cameras and microphones observe and see things and extract the data in real time. And that simplifies a lot of work. So a lot of considerations that we're currently making will become obsolete just from that.
Yeah, so it's like rethinking the whole problem. We don't need to even have emergency rooms necessarily a lot of times, because we'll have a traveling, whatever it is, and they could see if something happens on the street.
Yeah, the accuracy will be gradually improved because we can measure accuracy. And of course, there's some kind of, you can't get it up to 100% always. That's not possible, but you can eliminate errors. You can find bottlenecks where like something's more prone to error. You can balance it out and find your KPIs that you try to improve. And AI has the ability to iterate. Also, there's something it's called RALPH I've learned about. Maybe you've heard of RALPH. It's the idea to let AI iterate on working on a task list, essentially, that we first build with it together. So, I mean, that's kind of qualitative work, so not too measurable. But yeah, in healthcare, we were way more measurable. And we have a lot of things that, a lot of KPIs that are very clear. So if we have an emergency room flooded with people, then we can reduce this. We can reduce the overload there and try to find other channels, right? We assign or we find other channels and fill them and then do a new evaluations, right? So that's going to be the process, I suppose. There's also in Germany, I've heard about hospitals that do not have any medical practitioner in-house. So they're not emergency hospitals, of course, right? They are meant for scheduled procedures and whatsoever. So people go there and they get treated, but the physician himself is not in-house, sitting somewhere else and just doing diagnostics based on the data, giving telling the staff that's in that office what to do, kind of what treatment, what procedure, whatsoever is going to be scheduled next. And that's all heavily supported by digital health. And that's Germany, actually. So I myself wasn't a big fan of the German healthcare system because of the different insurances they have and very complex system for a foreigner like me. I'm Austrian. It was very hard to get through and to navigate the system. So I did experience the American system as more accessible in the way that you can privately, as a private individual, you can just access it, Of course, it is related also to financial capacities, but I did not experience it as that bad. Because in Germany, you do have, or in Europe, in most European countries, you pay a lot. You don't see it, but you pay a lot for healthcare as well. And here you don't pay it in before. So you actually only pay it when there's an issue, right? So it's just another approach. You can get insurance and then pay a lot. But for me as a foreigner, that's not the approach here, of course. At the first way, you go there and experience like a transparent market. And I did appreciate that. So there is a lot of things to improve in the American healthcare system. And there are good things about the European healthcare system, but still, I see that both have something to learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. I think Germany, like a lot of other European countries, has like a hybrid, kind of like a hybrid model between public and private, right? And US is
Right.
also pretty much like everything that you can imagine. They have that kind of healthcare in the US as well, right? Because we do have fully subsidized, government healthcare. We have fully private. So just most people in the US have either a mix of, Medicare or their employer insurance, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference. All right, cool. So thanks for this conversation and catching up. Like, where do people find you if they want to keep in touch or they want to reach out about Max Health?
So I have a newsletter on maxhealth.tech. Everybody can just sign up for that newsletter. It's not an annoying newsletter. It's just when something actually important is happening. And of course, I am reachable on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's mainly my channel where you can reach me on via email, of course. So yeah.
And then, like, if you're in San Francisco or you're in conferences, like, reach out. I think, is that going to be your kind of permanent home base, or are you thinking you're going to be kind of temporary while you're
So I've
building?
noticed that the traveling is part of this job because I am an advocate of standardization, global standardization of health data. And for that reason, I will be around at conferences and I will appreciate anyone who comes up to me and gives feedback on what I'm doing or has questions or wants to work on something together. I'm still working on a lot of open source stuff. And yeah, that's important. It's important to do a lot of open source to pressure the others that try to sell the inflationary software. Of course, we all do it, right? But we need to keep up progress to get better, right?
Right. I think now it's not just being able to do it, it's being able to show how you're solving a problem in the real world, right? And it's partnering with somebody that's willing to give you a chance to use them kind of as a guinea pig as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you're working on. Thanks for coming on. And this was awesome conversation, Max.
It was. Thank you so much.
All right. Wish you
See
all the
you.
best. All right.
Thank you for listening to Out of the Fire. If you found this conversation valuable, can continue following the work and insights on Substack at FHIR IQ Playbook. You can also find the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Apple Podcasts. Join the Fire Goats group on LinkedIn to stay connected with others in the community and visit FHIRIQ.com to learn more about AI agents for Fire. Until next time,